Hey traders, TG Watkins here of simplertrading.com. And if you guys want to find anything more particular about me, you can go there or you can come over here to profitpilot.com, which is my own branded website. And also, you guys are seeing this on StockCharts.com. So, of course, you can come over here to StockCharts.com and find out more about the Moxie Indicator and pick it up over there if you want to have it on their platform. We do also have it on Thinkorswim, so take your pick. And then if you guys are interested, you can go over here to services under profitpilot.com, and that's where you can find more about the mastery, the alert room, classes, the indicator, anything else like that. That's where I have everything located. So today we're going to go over some basic principles about the Moxie indicator so that if you are looking to get into it, you can see how it can help you. If you are already in it and own it, then you can figure out how to use this better for your own trading, or just a good update for how I see certain things in the market, especially some of these big red flags that you should know about, whether on the green side or on the red side. So we're going to go through some tickers today, and hopefully this will be a good overview of how the Moxie indicator can keep you out of trouble. And then I'll also start to show you when it is good to start getting into a position. So let's dive in. All right, well, the first indicator that I wanted to show you is WWE, yes, World Wrestling Entertainment. And so what I really wanted to show you here is how the timing works for the Moxie indicator. Now, it doesn't show up here on StockCharts, but there is earnings. That was the catalyst that started this. So this was actually an earnings move. You know, of course, when it comes to earnings, it's anybody's guess. It's a crapshoot. Like, they can move up into earnings, they can move down in earnings. Anything happened. It's also an excuse for having the market move, whatever. The Moxie indicator, and I think with any indicator, they can't 100% predict what earnings are going to do and how they're going to behave. But what I can tell you is that when it does line up, there are some clues kind of heading into something. So what we could see here is that, yes, this chart did very well as price continued to follow the hourly 50 pretty well, right? So this is where I use the two-part rule. I want price to follow the moving averages, which is in this case the hourly 50, and I also want the Moxie indicator over 0. And so what we can see here is that it followed the hourly 50, but notice that the Moxie indicator kept going down and down and down. And so the way that we look at this and the way we think about it is that the Moxie indicator tries to represent how much energy, how much oomph is in the stock, how much gas is in the tank. And so one way to look at that is say, well, the distance above 0, because here's the 0 line, the distance above the 0 line is basically how much energy is in the stock, how much gas is in the tank. And so what you can see is that, well, there was a fair amount of gas in this tank that was able to propel price higher and higher and higher as it ran along the hourly 50. But what you should notice is that over the course of time, that energy kept getting lower and lower and lower. It kept using that gas in the tank in order to keep pushing up like that. Well, eventually it's going to run out of gas, and you can see that's where it ran out of gas, and it started going negative. So what you do, or what the Moxie indicator does, is it then prints a red arrow. That is what I call the Moxie price trigger, and that then just is a visual representation trying to tell you that the Moxie indicator is now gone negative. Basically, energy is now negative. And so one thing that we tend to see is, okay, probably a good time to just get out because, energy is now negative. And what you then might look at if you say, okay, well, hey, that was incorrect. That's, it's not telling me the truth or something like that, but price went higher, so it was wrong, right? Well, this is where I have the next set of rules. It's called an inverse trampoline move. So the fact is, price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below 0. That's an out of phase condition. Like, why is price up over the moving average if energy is in fact negative? And so that's what I see oftentimes, and that's why I call it the inverse trampoline move. Because a regular trampoline move is just, you turn that around, it's actually a really good move to the upside. In fact, here you go. This is a regular trampoline move. Price should not be below the 50 if the Moxie indicator is above 0. So what that's telling you is it's a high pressure, high buoyancy type trade. And the reason I call it a trampoline move is because, well, it looks like you jumped on a trampoline and you get shot all the way up like that. So that is a regular trampoline move, and this is an inverse trampoline move right there. So you can see the two differences, and look at the energy that was released in both of them. Pretty good situation, right? So the heads up right here is that the indicator's gone negative, and the fact that price keeps continuing to push up like that should be a red flag, because price keeps going up, but the Moxie indicator keeps living below zero. It's still negative. That's a problem. And then what you can see is you got one little clue right here where price started to break below the hourly 50 again, and you got the 8 below the 21. So you were starting to see some problems and some cracks develop. Well, then you had earnings, and once the earnings just tanked the stock like that, all it had to do was go sideways, flag sideways, and continue to flag down as it continued to run into the underside of a downtrending hourly 50. And you can see here there's just huge negativity for the Moxie indicator. So this thing is going to take a while to recover if and when it's going to recover. So that's kind of how I look at that. I've been watching this for a while. Nothing I was able to really trade because I was only noticing it kind of back here. But as it's done its thing, I don't like to trade earnings. And I don't often trade short. So this is something I was kind of looking at and say, hey, this was a pretty good tool, pretty good lesson for whenever you're going to be seeing this in the future based on your own trades and whatever you're looking at out there. The other thing I'll just kind of point out is I often talk about the moving averages, namely the 50. And if we look at the daily chart, you can see that that price was floating off of the daily 50 for a very long time. Now, on the daily chart, there really isn't anything here that could tell us when this was going to happen. This is why I almost always use multiple time frames, 2 or 3 or more time frames to help give me that kind of clarity. Like clearly the information was on the hourly, not the daily. But the thing you could tell about the daily was that at some point this was going to be a problem because that distance between price and the daily 50, it just doesn't last forever. It's hanging out there. It's got a giant air pocket underneath, and it's really kind of running out of support. So you kind of think about a pivot point. Here was the 50. There's a lot of weight pushing down on price right there, right at that pivot point right there. So it kind of made sense that at some point it was going to happen like that. Use the hourly chart to help really figure it out. All right, so another one that I wanted to get into is GP. Now let's go back over here because this is the move that I wanted to show right in through here. All right, and it's kind of the same thing as WWE. Notice that we've got the Moxie price trigger right there. Okay, so that's probably a place that you want to get out or just make sure that you aren't going long because, maybe you look at this as maybe this was a pullback in an uptrend, right? Well, the Moxie indicator is trying to tell you otherwise. Notice here, we also have an inverse trampoline move, just like WWE. Inverse trampoline move is when price is over the 50, but the Moxie indicator is below zero, which is not a good situation. You don't want to be going long on an inverse trampoline move. And you can see also, notice how there was one back here too. So that was a false long. And the fact that the Moxie indicator for this entire time, weeks, that the indicator was just staying below zero, operating below zero, not looking good, should help keep you out of a bad trade like this because it keeps you from getting suckered into any of these pops like this. They're just popping and they're going nowhere. They're pop and flop. And so there was really never any kind of entry because number one, price never held any of these moving averages. And number two, the Moxie indicator was just staying below zero the entire time. And so this is something that you need to just keep noticing and say, the rules aren't there. Let's not go in. And then once this thing finally broke down, you can see right here, price got underneath the hourly 50 and the hourly 200 and actually got rejected exactly at the hourly 50 right there and continued right there and continued right there. And that's how that thing started to move down. So what you could then see on the daily chart was kind of that same situation about WWE. Notice the giant gap between price and the daily 50. So that was the thing that was like, okay, price is floating in midair. Is it going to go sideways into support or is it going to come crashing down to that moving average and then some? And you can see here, based on the hourly chart, it was trying to give you a heads up for weeks that this was not a good situation to be in. And maybe if you're interested in shorting, that it could have been a good short for you. So that was GP, another one that I think worked out pretty well. Let's look at First Solar. And again, we kind of go back here. I want to show you some other historical trades in through here so you guys can see how these things work. Now notice, this one actually worked out very well in the daily chart. The daily chart fired the negative Moxie price trigger right on cue. That one was really, really good. And you can see that you got that. And you can actually notice that it was a little messy because First Solar is kind of a messy stock, a messy chart. But generally speaking, because this takes days and weeks to unfold, but generally speaking, you could see that price kept going higher and higher, but notice that the Moxie indicator just kind of kept getting weaker and rolling over. It just wasn't looking good. And that is the negative divergence that I talk about all the time. Why is price going up if energy keeps going down? And we talk about gas in the tank. Well, it kept going higher and higher on less and less gas in the tank. It kept using that gas in the tank. And you can see right here, it finally ran out of gas. It went negative, and that is where price got to the daily 50 and actually started to go lower and fall off of the daily 50 with the 8 below the 21. So those 8 and 21 EMAs were part of the thing that was kind of giving you the heads up about that. And so we can also take that and look a little bit further over on the hourly. And what you'll see here on the hourly, a couple things to point out, is notice kind of right in through here when price looked like it was kind of trying to figure out what to do. Couldn't quite make any highs, but notice that there was a level. Price was trying to go flat, but notice that the Moxie indicator just kept kind of trending down. There again is that negative divergence. Price going sideways, but the Moxie indicator going down. It's a problem. And then what you can see is, and this is if you want to go short, look right here. And this should at least tell you definitely don't go long. This is, in all its glory, an inverse trampoline move. Price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below 0. And you can see exactly that. Price tried to get up over the hourly 50, came back down to the hourly 50, could not hold the hourly 50, and the Moxie indicator was below 0. Watch out. And you could see, sure enough, once it broke this level right there, and that's where it broke right there on the daily chart. So this one was another, again, chart was kind of messy, but using the Moxie indicator and kind of seeing the big picture, this really kept you out of a big problem. And it did it right on cue, especially right there with that inverse trampoline move on the hourly, and then right here with that Moxie price trigger on the daily. So First Solar was another pretty good example about that. And then how about SNDL? This is a cannabis stock way back when. And actually what I wanted to show you was how I was trading this one for some really, really big gains back when all this stuff was kind of going crazy. So I showed you a couple situations where the Moxie indicator was trying to keep you out of some bad trades. Well, now I'm going to show you how the Moxie indicator actually helped get me into some good trades like this. And so what we can see here, right there, look at that. There's the Moxie price trigger. So what you do is, there's a big move up like this. Okay, I don't always want to just buy the pop because what's the issue? It's gone straight up. It's too far away from moving averages. It's not anywhere near its support. There is likely to be a pullback. And sure enough, it pulled right back into some of these moving average supports right there. And at the same time, the Moxie indicator fired. It went positive. So good. That's what we're looking for. In order to go long, I want to see the Moxie indicator fire to the upside, and I want to see price stay over moving averages. And then what you can see is on the right here, that is when it happened on the daily chart. I kind of zoom in a little bit further for you on that one. So that did a nice bounce right there off of the daily 50. The Moxie indicator was already positive over 0, so the daily chart was totally set. That followed the rules too. Price pulled back, bounced off the daily 50, Moxie indicator above 0, nothing wrong there. Everything was looking all hunky-dory. And then we can continue to see, price kind of came up like this and then just accelerated. And you can see that, as I was saying about the daily chart, with price bouncing off the daily 50 with the Moxie indicator above 0, that was a good trade. Well, look, that's exactly the same thing right here on the hourly chart. Price came into and bounced right off the hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator above 0. So same rule for two different time frames, and look at the results that came from it. Obviously, the market was all kind of working pretty well together, but the rule is still a rule, and this is how it works. And this thing was something like 300 or 400% that we made on this. It was insanity at the time, but it's really what helped propel my account into the millions. And this is some of the stuff that I've tried to show videos about. So this was one of the really big trades that I had back in the day. Since then, we're looking at SNDL, and it's just kind of been dwindling. You can see that here on the daily chart. They haven't really done much. Now, kind of looking at this and saying, well, is there going to be something happening soon? Maybe. We got to keep an eye on it. So we are starting to see some things wake up. And if you want to, keep your eye on it, and we'll see if we can start getting some action again. All right, then another one that we can be looking at is FSR, not to be confused for First Solar. This is the electric car Fisker. So again, we're going to be looking at some of the things that how the Moxie indicator works between the two time frames. So number one, look at this. Here on the daily chart, you can see that the Moxie indicator has fired. It has gone positive, and it's exactly at the same time that price has basically crossed over or then tested the daily 50. Beautiful. That actually worked out really well, really well. And you can even see, if we kind of call a level in through here, you can see the Moxie indicator kept turning up like that. And then where we really started to see some stuff take off was, again, what do I like to see? I like to see price test moving averages. So here's price up and over and off of the hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator above zero. So we got two time frames, both the hourly and the daily, setting us up on something like this. And boy, this thing worked out well. And you can see here, it has been following the hourly 50 pretty well. Now, I think it got extended. Obviously, it's pulling back. So give it a little bit of time, give it some breather. And but that's how Fisker worked out. All right, then BILI. We'll go back a little ways on this one. Kind of zoom out and come over here. And wanted to show you another couple of trades. So, this one has been a little challenging back in the day. I think it was right in through here that I'm looking at. And I want to show you another inverse trampoline move. So yeah, right there. Okay. So what we can see here is notice that, and again, this one's kind of messy as far as the chart goes, but the overall picture of what we're trying to see is notice that price kept going higher, but the Moxie indicator kind of was having some troubles, kind of like this, but ultimately the Moxie indicator had higher or lower lows compared to the higher high of price. So what does that tell you? Price kept going higher on less and less energy. And then you can see here, it just started to keel over. You have to, this is why you use stops, because sometimes these things move pretty quickly and it just started rolling. So something like that you want to get out of. But then you see this and you're on the daily chart and you think, well, maybe this thing is actually going to be working out, because you say, well, price looks like it wants to bounce off the daily 50, right? Well, if you look at the Moxie indicator on the daily chart, you can see that it is below zero. So notice that. And the whole premise of this thing was that this move, look at that is a giant inverse trampoline move. I know it's real tough to kind of take a look at these things and day after day after day, and you kind of see a move on an hourly chart, but the bigger picture is on the daily chart that this whole thing is an inverse trampoline move. I know it's tough. There's a pretty big move up through here that, yes, you could take advantage of if you want to on the hourly chart. There is an hourly setup. You can see right there the trigger, then you have the 50 and trampoline moves, in through here. But while you're taking that long trade, you should be looking at this and being aware, kind of in the back of your brain, that, oh, hey, I am noticing that the daily chart is over the 50, but not the Moxie indicator. The Moxie indicator is still below zero. That is an inverse trampoline move on the daily chart. It's going to be a problem at some point. And you can see that sure enough, it finally kicked in, tried to bounce a little bit, and then continued down. And you can see it just did not hold the daily 50. And then as far as the precision of when that last drop was going to happen, right here, inverse trampoline move. Notice that price was over the hourly 50, the Moxie indicator was below zero, and boom, you get a big move to the downside. So one other thing I'll just kind of mention to this is, the definition of a downtrend is when the fast moving average is below the slow moving average. Definition of an uptrend is when the fast moving average is over the slow moving average. So kind of keep that in mind when you see things like that. All right, so that was BILI. And then we'll get into our last one, TGT, target. And we kind of come over here and kind of slide this over like this. And this one, wanted to show you that, for as long as this thing has had a pretty good move, at some point it was going to come to an end or big pullback, and you want to be aware of that because you don't always want to ride through something like this. It can be weeks at a time that it's going to be doing something. Here's where the Moxie indicator is trying to communicate to you. So notice that on the hourly chart, as price is kind of moving up like this, notice that, we're kind of the Moxie indicator is rising. That's great, but it's a little, red, green, red, green, red, green. What you really want to see is some really solid colors like this, whether to the upside or to the downside. And then once you kind of start getting up here, you can see that even the angle of price, the ascent of price starts to get a little funky. It starts to chop around a bit. The momentum is kind of waning. You can just see that it's not really climbing as fast as possible, and it's starting to get jagged, starting to get a little ragged up there. But notice what the Moxie indicator is doing. It's suddenly really falling off, right? It is really, really falling off. And the last Moxie price trigger you get right here, right when the Moxie indicator goes below 0. And even though price continues to try and move up like this, what does the indicator do day after day despite price going up? The indicator continues to go down despite price moving up. That is negative divergence. When you start seeing something like that, it's problematic. If you're long, you better figure out where your stop is and if you need to get out or take profits. And if you want to go short, well, then that's the way that you can start looking for that. So that is something that you want to be aware of. And look at that, just down, 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 despite price going up. And there, right there, price got stuck underneath the hourly 50, continued to get stuck underneath the hourly 50, continued right there, and then it just kept moving on down. And then you can see here on the daily chart, there's your Moxie price trigger, and you can see here price started to fail through the daily 50. So that was some pretty good situations in there looking at that. And yeah, you can just see this thing just kept moving on down. One other thing, I guess, while I'm here, I'll show you, maybe the next little bump up. At some point these things bounce. Well, look at this. You can see here's price down. Here's the Moxie indicator up. And oh, look, right there. There's your Moxie price trigger right as price flags sideways into an uptrending hourly 50. It uses the hourly 50 for support and boom, up goes price. So you got your divergence, you got your price trigger, you got your moving average support. That is the flow, that's the process of trying to catch along. Now, you might be asking me about this one. Well, a couple things. Yes, it fired, but did price hold the hourly 50? No. Pretty much immediately as the Moxie indicator fired, it did not hold the moving average. And so it was a failed trade. If you want to take something like that based on the rules, take it, but you better know that if it doesn't work out, just get out, because you need to have the two parts. You need to have the Moxie indicator and you need to have the moving averages. And if you get a little flash of the Moxie indicator, but then it fails because of the moving averages, wasn't a trade. This is how we take some things and we try them, and we got to figure out if they work or not. But clearly when they work out very well, very nicely, very cleanly. And you can see that there's a good trade right there. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for your time. Appreciate you tuning in. I hope that was some good information for you. And if you guys are interested, have any questions, come over to profitpilot.com, check out services. Come over and visit us at simplertrading.com. And then also, of course, StockCharts.com, which is where we are putting this video and where you guys are watching it. So thanks again for tuning in. And I'll see you guys in the next couple weeks. Bye.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.